5,000 years ago, the Chinese were sticking needles into various points on the body and getting miraculous results, and that became known as acupuncture. But in actual fact, one of the systems they used was manual pressure, breathing, and exercises were all part of this system. And the Touch for Health system incorporated that because they showed you where the meridians were, where the points were that would stimulate it, which muscles it related to, and also, more importantly, which organ that related to. And that goes back to these Chinese records of 5,000 years. So they knew that organs, muscles, and energy flows, as well as the nerves, were all connected. And an imbalance in one would create an imbalance in the other. So you could have an injury, say a burn or break a wrist or something, and you might block the energy flow going through the wrist to a particular organ. Then that organ would start to develop symptoms. So we have ailing organs that are linked to muscles with energy blocks, and sometimes the pain can be from an acupuncture point that's painful. So you think you've got arthritis in your wrist and you might need to rub this point here that's very good for headaches and constipation. And what you find is that if there's an acupuncture point or acupressure point, I like to call them, that's painful, it's actually telling the body there's a problem, and it tells you where, if you know how to interpret it. And I was intrigued that these Chinese people were doing these sort of exercises because I was doing karate, it was all hard, and these people were doing this wave-like Tai Chi type movement and silk weaving exercises based on the fact that the people in China who lived the longest were the silk weavers. And they started to notice this and said, well, maybe something they're doing is making them live longer. And so that was incorporated then into martial arts, into Kung Fu systems. And I'll just read this little quote. The unique health exercise in this book derived from the ancient silk weaving exercises, which have been part of Chinese culture for over 50 centuries. They take the name from the movements made by weavers during the actual process, of silk weaving. Superficially, these motions by weavers appear soft and fluid, but actually both weaver and silk are strong and firm. Developed by a Kung Fu master whose name is lost to antiquity, these exercises were initially performed by his students to promote better health, toughen muscles, stimulate internal organs, and ensure long life. And so here's our lungs, and there's your heart. Now the lungs hang in here, something called the pleural dome, by 3 ligaments. And when we breathe, they expand and externally rotate on this vertical axis, but they expand in all directions. And underneath is a thing called the diaphragm, a big sheet of muscle. And as the diaphragm descends and the liver descends and the stomach moves out the way, they have to revolve around their own axes, and this is called tergor. And actually, as the diaphragm goes down and makes these organs move around themselves, that actually massages them to well-being. So healthy breathing and healthy diaphragmatic movement go with organ health as well. Now, when we rub these points, they're the ones that are related to the organ and the related muscles. Now, these ones here are related to the lungs, and they're also related to the deltoid muscles. But that's the deltoid muscles is of less importance at the moment. But if our lungs have been fighting off an infection and need help, if we rub these, you'll find that they're tender. If they need working, they're tender. All of the points that we will show, if they're tender, they need the work. If they're not, then I rub them for about 5 seconds, just give them a good stimulation. Hello, lungs, morning. Done. But if they're tender, I go, something's going on in the lungs and it needs help. So I'll stay there for about 10 seconds and give it a good rub out. Then I'm going to check later in the day, how did that fare? It's got tender again. Okay, I'll rub it again. And unbeknownst to you, your body's starting to fight things off. And then there's various vitamins we'll talk about that also help the immune system.